told me to. You didn't tell me to wear a red shirt, Jim. So I really feel out It's good to see you all, and it's really fun to be here. I'd probably be here more often, but I still live up in the boonies north of Forest Lake, and it's kind of a long drive. But anyway, I wanted to tell my story because it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun ride, and it began in grade school, actually. It was like about, Jim mentions, like about 3rd grade. And yes, that's about when we got to know each other at Christ the King School in South Minneapolis. And the first thing I remember was singing in a little group like in 3rd or 4th grade, and we went over to the Holy Angels Convent and we sang for the nuns over there. The bells of St. Mary's, I hear they are calling. Now Jim said, you don't really remember that. Well, you know, I mean, maybe it was an audition choir and you didn't make the cut. I mean, I'm just saying. Or you weren't angelic enough. You never were known to be angelic. Yeah. So that was the first experience. That was in probably about 1948, and I moved to Milwaukee. My dad was transferred to a job, so there wasn't much music going on in Milwaukee, except that my folks were always the life of the party because they played piano duets and they played all the oldies and people would stand around the piano and sing, and it was a great time. Moved back, my dad was transferred back to Minneapolis, so in the 1950s I get back to Southwest High School. And who is there again but Foy? You know, I can't get rid of the guy. So anyway, we played in a band together, not choir. So we had a good time doing that. Not much singing going on, except when we would have a couple of beers and get in the car and cruise on Lake Street. And we'd start singing, those wedding bells are bringing up that old gang of mine, and the Four Lads stuff. We had a lot of fun singing together. Then it got serious in the 60s because I got married in 1959. And so I joined the church choir at St. Richard's Church. And I was really fortunate to have a great director. His name was Richard Skadava. And he was one of the rare people's director that could direct like a 45-person choir sitting at the keyboard. And it takes a special talent to do that, and he did a great job. And he was also on call whenever there was need for a harpsichord in the Twin Cities to play, like at the Minnesota Orchestra, he'd be the one called on to do that. Then I got a job at Plastics Incorporated in St. Paul, and I was there for about 10 years, and I was a purchasing agent there, and so I would always welcome salesmen, you know, whoever came in, I wanted to be courteous and have them come in. And so there was, I had a call, there was this guy out in the lobby who sells printed office forms. And I said, well, let him in, I'll talk to him. And the guy comes in and he starts talking and talking more. How am I going to get rid of this guy? I mean, I've got stuff to do. And I'm not interested in office forms anyway. So anyway, he starts talking about music. Well, then that got my attention. Oh yeah, what, you know? And he says, well, I sing with this men's group. Would you like to come to our concert? And I said, well, sure. I mean, I was about ready to do anything to get rid of him at that point. And so I said, yeah. He said, I'll call you tomorrow and let you know where you can get your tickets. Well, the guy's name was Bob Spong. Oh, Bob, you're here. Oh, I didn't know you were here, Bob. Anyway, so he calls me the next morning. He says, yeah, I've got some tickets lined up, and you can pick them up from this fella. He lives just 4 blocks from you, and his name is Joel Kleshhold. And so I went over and picked up the tickets. And Joan and I went to the show, and I was enthralled. I think it wasn't more than 2 weeks when I joined the Commodore Chorus, directed by Harold Allring. And So we started a carpool because lived in Richfield and driving downtown Minneapolis. And I'm riding with Joel Kleshhold and Harry Tickner and Stan Gilbertson and Don Sun. That was a fun carpool. So anyway, my first quartet, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of quartets, but anyway, the first one that I belonged to was called the Skeletones. I'm not going to get out of the range. But anyway, I brought a photo album along, and you can take a look at that. The very first show that I was in with the Commodores was called Melodies for Maladies. And so I was part of a quartet called the Skeletones for this show. We had our black outfits on with the bones, you know, and we're in this closet. And so all of a sudden the nurse would hear a knocking on the closet door. She'd come over and open the closet, and we would sing, "I ain't got nobody." And she'd slam the doors. What the heck's going on? And knocking on the door again. And then, "I've got you under my skin." Slam the door, and then a knock on the door again. She opens it up, and Don Sun says, "I've got a bone to pick with you." Anyway, it was just a lot of fun. So that was my first quartet. That was with Joel Kleshhold and Don Sun, and a fellow by the name of Doc Matthews. You probably don't remember him. Then I moved on to a lot of different quartets and so on, and shows. My first international, by the way, was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and that was quite the experience for me, except that when I got home, my folks were waiting at the airport because my little daughter had an emergency appendectomy when I was on the plane on the way home. So anyway, in 1971, my second quartet was called the Combined Effort, and that was with Warren Kreckelberg and Nori Celine and Les Ottman. You might remember some of those. Nori had a marvelous bass voice. Warren was a lot of fun. And so we sang on a lot of Commodore shows, and we sang for a couple of contests and so on. In 1975, I took a job with the Plastic Products Company up in Lindstrom, and so I really, by that time, I had 6 children, and so I had to really back out of the Commodore chorus. However, that didn't keep me from trying to get into a quartet, and I found out that a summer theater group in Forest Lake called Masters Theater Company were putting on Music Man. So, all right. So I lined up. You may remember a guy named Eugene Anderson. He was baritone. He sang with the Barron County Chorus. Anyway, he was baritone, and the other parts you probably didn't know. This was not a registered quartet. I just organized the quartet to do the Music Man, and that was a blast. 5 of my family members were in that play. And then there was a fellow that was working on the sets at this particular play in Forest Lake, and he cornered me after the last production, and he said, "Hey, would you like to sing in a quartet?" I said, "Well, maybe we could give it a try." Well, his name was Larry Avery. And so then that makes my 4th quartet was called Friends of Mine, and it was with Larry Avery and Gene Teetsy and Rod Jones from the St. Paul Chorus. So we had a lot of fun singing on shows for the St. Paul Chorus, and we were in a couple of contests. 1985, living in Lindstrom, my wife and I started a mixed adult chorus, and we've had a lot of fun. The chorus is still going today, 30 years later. But anyway, I started what would be my 5th quartet as part of this chorus, and has had quite a few different iterations. Anyway, that was called Company of 4. And so, like I say, that's in the Chisago Lakes area, and we were not a registered quartet. Then I heard about this new group that was combining members from different choruses, and they were called the Great Northern Union. And so I went down there to check that out, directed by Roger Williams, and again, I was wowed. And so I decided it was worth the drive to come down for Great Northern Union rehearsals and everything that went on along with that. So that was a lot of fun. That included internationals at New Orleans in '92, Calgary in '93, Miami in '95, Kansas City in 2000, Portland in 2002. And so that was an exciting ride for me. I really I really thoroughly enjoyed that. And during that time that I was singing with Great Northern Union, for a very short time, I formed another quartet. This is my sixth, which was called Forevermore. And it was Larry Avery and Jim Hall, and I don't even remember the name of the bass. He wasn't around for very long. 1994, well, I should back up a little bit. I think Great Northern Union, I was still singing with them, and we were doing a show in the Happiness Emporium. We're singing on the same show. And again, the theater company in Forest Lake were putting on Music Man. And so I asked Jim, I think I asked Jim first if he'd be interested in being involved in that. And yeah, sure. And then I said, well, how about Bob? Well, go ask him. So we ended up having a quartet for the production of Music Man in 1994 in Forest Lake. And we picked up a marvelous baritone. This guy is really good. His name happens to be Doug Chapman. Oh, Doug. Hi. Oh, you're new to me. We really had a lot of fun as a quartet. I think we stuck together for 4 or 5 years. Bob, I think, dropped out after a while. We had Larry Avery, but we did the play, and we sang on a Great Northern Union show, and we did some contests, including going to Miami Beach for the seniors competition. That was kind of fun. 2002 was my 8th quartet, which was Jim Hall and his son Matt, and it was with myself as lead and my son Joe as tenor. I'm sorry to say that my son Joe passed away less than a month ago with pancreatic cancer. Joe was at and Doug were at the service, and Jim and Bob. Anyway, that was quartet was with Jim and Matt Hall and Joe, and it was called Relative Pitch. Again, we sang on several Stillwater shows, and we did some contests. Well, then it was kind of a long time, but I was still singing with this chorus up in Lindstrom, the Chisago Lakes area, and I would put a quartet together for just about every show. In fact, a couple of times Bob Dalma stood in for me. I needed a tenor and sang on a couple of shows. We also did gigs at Joan of Arc Church. In 2013 was the formation of my 9th quartet, and that's the River City Quartet. And actually we got together to sing for a memorial service for Jim and my high school buddy, and they wanted a quartet for that, and so we got Mr. Dama and Rick, and we sang a couple of gospel numbers, and we decided to stay together doing that. And we are still going today, doing gospel. We've done quite a few shows here and there, a lot of private gigs, and most fulfilling, I think, for me is doing gospel. We've done gospel at churches every summer for the last 3 or 4 years now, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's 9 quartets. I never went the route of being in the same quartet for 30 years. That's kind of boring, isn't it? Like the Happiness Emporium. You know. So anyway, thank you for listening, and it's been a ride. And Barbershop, I was not totally unfamiliar with it because my older brother was in that when he was in high school in Milwaukee, but also he belonged to the chorus. I think it was in Kirkwood, Missouri. Is there a chorus there? Anyways, right out of St. Louis. So anyhow, that's my story. Thank you.